Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Sam, and today, well, I guess tonight, it's already 9 o'clock, and I set up a call here just so I can go out and talk about something that I've seen in the past hour that's really interesting. We're going to talk about the college football season and how it's currently in jeopardy and whether or not we're actually going to see any college football this fall. So, news came out, I want to say about an hour and a half ago, that the Big Ten Conference is really pushing to delay this fall. They're not going to play the fall season. They're not going to play sports this fall. That's what it sounds like. And it sounds like there will be a decision made by the Big Ten Conference within the next, I'll say, 48 hours. And now, what does this mean? This means that college football will not be happening for the Big Ten this fall. That includes a bunch of major universities, obviously, like Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, Wisconsin. All those are factories for professional athletes that go to the NFL. So we're having no college football for that conference, probably. No sports on any other matter at all. So the entire fall season for the Big Ten is probably just going to be done and over with. And of course, the Big Ten has been in contact a lot with all of our Power Five schools currently. It's ACC, SEC, all those guys. They're in contact, and they're working towards a joint agreement of sorts to determine how they will salvage the college football season. Now, obviously, there are a bunch of other athletic programs going on at the same time. There are a bunch of other seasons, but at the same point, let's be honest, most of these schools, most of the athletic departments only make money off of 2 or 3 sports, and one of them is always college football. So if it comes down to it, they're going to say, look, we're going to do everything we can to play the college football season because we have to make that kind of money to support our athletic department and support our other minor programs. But when push comes to shove, they're not going to play the other programs. And this isn't primarily about college football at this point. Because most of our programs in the fall are not money-making programs. College football and usually basketball, which happens later on in the winter, those are the moneymakers for most universities. So we're at a point where Big Ten sounds like we're not going to have college football for that conference this fall. That's, like I said, a huge impact. So, like I said, Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State. That means Justin Fields, the second best quarterback behind Trevor Lawrence in all of college football, will not be playing this fall. Now, there's no official statement. There's no official decision yet, but all signs point to it going this direction, that we're not going to have a Big Ten college football season in the fall. Now, I say in the fall, but specifically because it looks like we're going to head towards a spring college football season this year, just because they can't afford to not play college football. But of course, a lot of questions arise. If you move to the spring, how does that affect the other sports that are already planned for that season? How does it affect athletes who want to go to the NFL? Like if you're Trevor Lawrence is not. Let's say Justin Fields. If you're Justin Fields, are you going to play in the spring when you potentially have the combine and the NFL draft also in the spring? I mean, let's put it this way: the NFL really doesn't care much about college football as long as they're producing pro athletes. So the NFL isn't going to alter the draft date or anything like that, or they're not going to shift their schedule around for college football. So it might come to a point where some guys are going to have to decide whether they want to sit out their potentially final season and just go to the NFL draft or play college football. And you could still go to the draft potentially. I don't know. Maybe work out an agreement there. But it's going to be a bit of a mess. And I fully expect the other conferences will fall. If you are the Big Ten, you do not make this decision without fully knowing, or at least how he's expecting, you can get the other Power 5 conferences to follow suit. Because like I said, it's Ohio State, which has been one of the best programs for the past 10 years. It's Michigan, which has been, well, it's more legacy than actual accomplishment at this point. But at the same point, it's still a big program. Penn State as well. You've got plenty of Wisconsin, everyone who's been up there. These are schools that are almost always ranked in the top 25 year to year. And if you're taking all 4 of them out of the way, and there are schools too, not just them. There are a bunch of other schools in that conference that have been competitive as well. But primarily, those are the 4 year to year are always in the top 25. If you're pulling all those schools out of consideration, I would think you would have to, as a unit, as the Power 5, you have to consider, well, if we get rid of that conference, we're really losing a lot of star power here. And I think, like I said, I don't think the Big Ten makes the decision without knowing they can at least pull 1 or 2 other conferences with them. And, that may be wrong, that may be right, but the full reality of the situation is it's not looking like we're going to have college football this fall. And we already know, because athletic departments have said, athletic directors have said, they can't afford to not have college football this season. They need it for their budgets. They need to be able to have that revenue for next year. To support programs like Stanford. Stanford's a school that it's a huge school, tons of funds. They already cut a bunch of sports programs towards the beginning of all this a couple of months ago. So if you're a school like that that's cutting back programs, I mean, you cannot afford to take a hit of not having a college football season. So we're at kind of a stage right now where a lot of the minor conferences have already canceled their seasons. The MAC has postponed fall sports. The Ivy League obviously has canceled their fall sports as well. So we have a lot of the minor conferences have already canceled them. It's basically down to the Power Five at this point. We're kind of holdouts in this whole situation, hoping to get a college football season done in their regular schedule. But now we're at a point where if the Big Ten pulls out, they're going to drag their conferences with them. It's just a question of how many. And I assume that once you're to the point where you have 2 or 3 go, all 5 of them have to go, just because of the fact that it wouldn't make sense to operate 2 conferences in the fall and 3 in the spring. It just really wouldn't make sense at that point, especially if you're trying to compete for championships and things like that. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to hold it like that. I don't know how it would work behind the scenes with TV contracts and that kind of stuff. It would be a huge mess. How would it alter recruiting? So I think recruiting cycles would have to be changed a little bit because coaches would be available in the fall where they would normally be coaching, and some coaches would be available in the spring. You would have to really sync this up. And the NCAA has been absolutely useless in this whole matter in determining policy for these schools and for football programs at this level. So the NCAA has not done a good job whatsoever in managing any of this. It's really been the Power 5 conferences making their own decisions. Unfortunately, they haven't come up with a joint decision yet. I would expect we get that done within the next 2 weeks probably. We're going to have a joint decision come out here. But it seems that the Big Ten is really forcing the issue here with this impending decision they have not made yet, but it certainly sounds like they're going to make with postponing the fall season. And again, that means a lot of other athletes are not going to be able to play their sports probably at all. I say college football is going to be an exception to that rule just because, they said they need the money. It's big money in college football. It's a business within itself. It is a business. At the end of the day, college football is a business. It's not about amateurism necessarily, even though the pretend it is. It really isn't. It's about making money. So we're going to have college football this year because we have to, because the universities and athletic departments need us to. The question is just when we're going to see it. And it certainly sounds like it won't be this fall, especially with this move coming here. But again, that opens up a ton of questions moving forward. How will the Power 5 relate to other minor conferences? Will we have those minor games? Not those minor games, but the guaranteed games where you pit a very small school against a major school. It's a home game for the big school. They get to put their 5-star athletes up against your 2 stars, and the losing side, which inevitably that's going to be, gets paid a lot of money for those games. They get paid a lot of money to go into opposing team stadiums, get on television, they get smacked by 45 points. And that basically is the make or break. Those are the make or break games on their schedule, honestly, in a sense financially, because you make millions of dollars off of going to play those games and going and get killed in those games. But you make a lot of money off that. That's the majority of your income is coming from those games where you travel and you play Clemson, Ohio State, Michigan, LSU. When you go and get smacked by those teams, those are the ones who are paying you a lot of money. But if you remove those games, and now you have these minor conferences, the Ivy Leagues, the MAC, all the kind of ones, the Sun Belt, you have all those conferences. Now they don't have that outlet going to Power 5 to make that money. You're going to start seeing D1 schools and smaller conferences cut back on athletic programs. So it's going to be a huge hit here no matter what happens. And I wonder what Power 5 is going to do moving forward in relation to the NCAA, especially in the football settings. The NCAA, like I said, has been, for the most part, useless throughout this whole process for determining what's going to happen with college football at the level of the Power 5. So I wonder moving forward to what extent they're going to work together, or if they're going to work together at all. What extent will rules legislated by the NCAA apply to college football for Power 5 teams? So it'll be interesting to see how this all works out. I think there's going to be a huge restructuring of the, I guess you call it, political climate within college football, because that's really kind of what it is. Not necessarily the players, but the people behind closed doors. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what's going to happen here. But it certainly sounds like we're not going to have college football this fall.